My name is Bert, and this is the Still Life Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Still Life Podcast. As always, I am your host, Bert. Hope everybody had a good weekend. It is Monday. It is a new week. At least I hope everybody had a better weekend than I did. I spent a good chunk of yesterday in the hospital with kidney stones. I wish I could say it was the first time. It is not. Been dealing with kidney stones now for 16 years. Had my first one when I was about 23, and it was an eye-opening experience to say the least. I've had some procedures done. Unfortunately, they run on both sides of my family. I do have chronic kidney stones, so it doesn't really matter what I do, dietary changes, procedures, whatever. I will always have kidney stones, and I will always have to deal with kidney stones. Now, with that said, I've made some dietary changes and things over the last probably 3 to 5 years to reduce the frequency with which they occur. Now, what landed me in the hospital yesterday, I've had a stone moving since about Thursday. It was about Thursday afternoon. It really started moving, started causing me a lot of pain, and usually that'll last a day or two. However, in this case, it is now Monday, so almost 5 days later, 4 days later, still dealing with pain, which means the stone is still moving. Now, that could be a good thing. Could mean I'm going to hopefully pass the stone soon and then have no more pain. Could mean that the stone just hasn't found a place to camp out in my kidney. Either way, I'm still dealing with the pain until I either pass the stone or the stone stops moving. Now, the other fun part of this is because I have chronic kidney stones, last check I had, I think 6 or 7 between my two kidneys. So it's not like it's a one and done kind of a thing. Like they are loaded up, ready to rock and roll and cause me pain at any time. A few of the things that help mitigate the movement and formation of the kidney stones, though, I've got to stay away from some of the greens, which I enjoy, like celery, and particularly spinach. Spinach is very high in components that cause buildup of calcium oxalate, which is what my stones are made of. In addition to that, like I've got to kind of back off on red meat, which stinks. I love red meat. I don't eat it like all the time, but I mean, I've never been known to turn down a steak or a burger when I see one. So, I'm definitely not going to become vegetarian or vegan at all. I enjoy meat way too much. However, I just, cutting back, and I've cut back on red meat, but cutting back even just a little bit more probably wouldn't be the worst thing I ever did. Also, tea. I drink almost no tea, particularly iced tea. If I drink iced tea, and I am a sucker for sweet tea, but if I drink any iced tea, within 24 hours, I have a stone start moving. Every time, without fail, and that stinks. So I've never had issues with hot tea, because they say both green and black teas can cause issues with stones. Never had issues with them hot, just with iced teas. So I don't know if it's, the hotness of the beverage and the chemical compounds are hot, so they're less likely to form stones, or, I don't know, from a biological or chemistry, side of things, what the reason is why I can drink hot tea and not cold tea, but it is what it is. But anyway, enough about my kidney stones. Really no news on the job front. Followed up with the place I had an interview with last week. Have not heard anything back. Fingers crossed. It's a job I would really like to get into. It stays in my field or in the alcohol industry. And I haven't really gone much into my background, but for the last decade, I've been in the alcohol industry. Started off as a home brewer. It was something I always wanted to try, and got the stuff to, start brewing at home. First thing I ever made was a batch of mead. It was literally honey, yeast, or honey water and then yeast. Hands down the most foul thing I've ever concocted in my life, but I got hooked on the process and the chemistry behind brewing. So that, propelled me to look into the alcohol industry as a viable career field. Not something I was ever taught, in high school or outside of high school really ever, was that, working in the brewing industry, distilling industry, alcohol production industry was a viable career, which obviously a lot of people drink a lot of alcohol. And so, it is in fact a viable career. So started working at a homebrew supply shop, kept homebrewing, got involved with a local homebrew club, became president of the club and helped kind of grow and propel the club. And then started going to school at the Siebel Institute of Technology. The Siebel Institute of Technology is the oldest brewing school in the United States. So I was fortunate enough to get the VA to pay for my schooling, so I took the concise course in brewing technology and then the advanced brewing theory program through Siebel. That took me in all about 2.5 years to do. The courses aren't that long. It's just kind of timing and everything else, life, really trying to work and go to school and start a family and all these other things. So in 2017, got my first full-time brewing job as the head brewer for a small startup brewery here in the Kansas City metro area. And in May of 2017, so like 4 years ago, I completed the Advanced Brewing Theory program through the Siebel Institute of Technology and received my certificate from Siebel. Unfortunately, it's not like an accredited university, so I didn't get college credits from it, but it was a great kind of feather in my cap for the industry, as well as having worked with some of the local breweries and distilleries just to learn as much as I could while I was going through school. So did that for a little while, worked at a few different breweries, and then about 2 years ago started at a distillery. Again, because of the condition of my back, having to have back surgery and everything else, I am no longer at the distillery, which sucks because that was really kind of the last place I was hoping to land. I wanted to work there for the rest of my working life. So, here I am. I've been on this kind of job hunt. Not kind of, it's been a job hunt. Had a lot of ups and downs, and now I'm really kind of in the scramble phase as my finances start to dwindle and I'm running out of money for bills. So I've got to figure out what the next step is and hopefully land in something fairly soon. Now, with that said, the position that I'm currently in, I don't really have a ton of flexibility to be like, I'm just going to hold out for this job because this sounds great. I've got to find something to pay the bills, and then I can be looking for something better while I'm doing that. Now, over the last few days, I have looked at returning to school to get either an associate's or a bachelor's in something. Been looking at a lot of different things, whether it's marketing, business management, communications and broadcasting, something that I'm interested in or something that's just super practical. I'm really not sure which direction to go. And at this point in my life, I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine this morning. This is one of the first times, probably the first time in my life where I have no clear direction to go. Like I'm at this crossroads and I don't know which way is the right way. So I'm applying for all kinds of things all over the map from a kind of career spectrum standpoint. Like I said, I've got to pay the bills and I've got to find something that I can do to pay the bills. Now, I feel like, with everything we've been taught about resumes and building a professional portfolio and things like that, that like this is a bad thing. But guess what? It's a necessary thing as well. And a lot of employers, you only worked here for 2 years, you worked here for 6 months, and you worked here. You know what? I'm looking for the right place to land. And so, sometimes it requires just finding a place to land temporarily so I can pay bills and put myself in a better position. That's always been my end game, is to put myself and my family in a better position. Sometimes that means a lateral move with advancement potential. Sometimes it means jumping ship altogether and going somewhere else to kind of reevaluate the situation. It can mean any number of things for any number of people. So there's really no concrete way to do things. And we've been taught, all through school that, things have to be done this way. You have to go to school, you have to go to college and get a degree, and you have to do A, B, and C. But in all reality, in all actuality, that's not the way the world works at all. And there are so many other avenues to success. And really success can be defined by any number of metrics. There is not, contrary to business belief, one way to achieve success, especially in your personal life as a human. There are many different ways with which we view and determine how we are successful, or even if others are successful. I mean, let's look at baseball, for instance. If you're hitting, a 300 to 400 average, you're doing pretty dang good. but that also means that you're hitting at a 60 to 70% failure rate. How insane is that? That you're deemed successful, even by school standards, you would be getting an F. You would be failing. But in terms of baseball, you're doing pretty doggone good. So again, it's all relative to what you're doing and, sometimes what the industry deems as success or what you personally deem as success. I mean, a batter with an over 400 average is phenomenal. And you don't see a ton of Major League Baseball players with averages at or above 400 because that's a hard mark to achieve, and life is very much the same way. I've had far more failures than I have had successes, but those failures I learn and grow from, and it makes my successes a little bit easier to attain each and every outing. And I believe that's something that's important to remember, is that in order to have success, generally speaking, we must first have failure. And it's how we choose to respond and rebound from that failure that gives us success, makes us successful. I mean, some of the most successful people in the world, their story is fraught with failure and with adversity. And each and every time they've bounced back, they've overcome it with new ideas, new ways to do things, or they've made modifications to things that they tried before that failed. So, in order to obtain success at any level, we've got to fail. So we need to be less afraid of failure and take those opportunities, use them to learn, grow, improvise, adapt, overcome, and use that to propel us to be successful down the road. Now, it may not be overnight. It may not be in a day, a week, a month, or even a year. It could be several years of processes, trying, and failure. And again, it's not how many times you get knocked down. It's, of course, as we all know, how many times you get back up. So really, we need to be less afraid of failure and embrace that failure to drive us to be successful. So again, embrace the failure, let it propel you into the future. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining me today on the Still Life Podcast. As always, for questions, comments, topic ideas, suggestions, or to become a sponsor of the Still Life Podcast, you can email us, thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. That's thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining me today on the Still Life Podcast. We'll talk again soon.